friend. Welcome to the study. It is a pretty windy and blustery day outside with a little bit of rain. A little bit of rain. So you might hear whoosh the wind and some pattering sounds of rain on the window pane, and maybe the wind chimes outside. I've got something I would like to show you today. In a way, this video today is a shout out to Jess ASMR, and I'll give you the video link for his channel. He's a very, very nice guy who has a wonderful chess ASMR channel, and he's an incredibly gifted chess player and I could say instructor as well. On his channel he analyzes chess games and teaches different moves and strategies, and he has a very, very relaxing voice. Now, you might know that a few weeks ago I put out a video about Diocletian's palace in Split, Dalmatia, and the coincidence, and I hadn't actually planned exactly where I would be, but the coincidence is that I was in Split and at Diocletian's palace on the day that video came out. And while I was there, I bought this lovely little Roman chess set, or the pieces rather, and ASMR Chess saw them on social media and suggested that I put them in a video. So that's what I'm going to do today, because I think you'll enjoy that too. Now these pieces I thought were really nice. I like the shape, and of course they are Roman themed. They're very heavy on the bottom, you can hear that, and they have felt on the bottom. It already has collie fur on it, so you can tell I've played with them a little bit. And I like the verdigris for the white pieces, so they're metal. You can hear the metallic sound there. And I brought them back with me, and I'm using this soapstone chessboard that I've had for some years, and these pieces fit on it quite nicely. So I'm going to show you the pieces, and there's a black piece, and then I'll set up the pieces and I'll go through 2 games that I played on chess.com, and we'll have a few sounds of board pieces on the soapstone board. We'll have a little bit of metal sounds and a little bit of whispering commentary actually be a nice day to be out sailing. But we're in here, in the study, so I can spend some time with you, because this is where I want to be. So here we have a king, and you can see he's got a staff and a sash, some armor, and the leather that's protecting the thighs, and some boots, some marching boots. So we could probably call him the legate, or dux, the general. So he's a military official, but he's the king piece. So we'll set that up on that side. We have the two rooks that are in the shape of columns, and you can see the capital is kind of a composite capital, Corinthian and Doric. On the top, we are going to be looking at some architectural columns in a video very soon, so this is a nice little introduction. Let's get the other king, the White King, with his verdigris. I don't know whether to call him general or king, or perhaps just imperator. And he has a beard, so probably later than the Republic. Beards came in and out of fashion at different times. The little boots remind me of the stories of Caligula. And we'll get the white rooks with the lovely verdigris on the columns. The white knights, again a little bit of collie fur, just a little bit, but I really like them, and they're nice and heavy. They're very pretty. So there are white knights, are eques, and two more eques for the black side. You can see they've got swords out instead of spears, so they're probably shock cavalry. Alexander is usually pictured with a spear because of the big mosaic in Pompeii. Let's have a look at the queens. So a Roman woman there in her very, very nice robes. A bit of jewelry, so she's from probably the ruling class, probably the wife of the general. And Roman women seemed to have a lot more independence or power over themselves than the Greek women. The Greek women, some of them not even allowed to go out of the house, whereas the Roman women could divorce their husbands if they wanted to, and get back all of the money from their dowry. And here we have two centurions, I think, for the bishops. This is the black side. They have their armor and the shield or scutum. So centurion there. And we'll put the white centurion that. So with our pawns we have the probably legionaries. Oh, I know what this white is from. I wrapped the pieces in some makeup, some cotton makeup pads to bring them home because the salesman at the shop just threw them into a bag and I didn't want them to be damaged. So there we'll have our pawns. Or rather, Miles, the legionary soldier. Here we are, with our Roman pieces set up, the armies facing each other on the soapstone board. And as I said, this is a game. There are two games I played a few years ago on chess.com. So we'll go through them. So I was playing white and my opponent was playing the black. So I've opened with a queen's pawn there, and the opponent comes out with his queen's pawn as well. Then I brought my knight out. So this looks like possibly some kind of English type opening. I used to favor that queen side when I played. We'll see if I follow through. And he moves a pawn. And my next move is to bring this pawn up. So you can see I have two pawns out here with the knight favoring that queen side. Considering the defense is doing some kind of Sicilian defense. Well, let's see what happens next. So he brings out his king's pawn. So I don't know if this is Caro-Kann maybe, with the pawns like that. It'd be interesting to see what some more experienced players would say about this, people who play more frequently than I do. As I said, I'm not an expert chess player, but we'll keep going. So I next brought out my knight. So I've now taken control of a lot of the center with the pawns and knights, and he is also taking control of the white squares on that fifth line there. And yeah, I haven't got the bishop out, so I don't know how English the opening really is. And he moves another pawn. So I'm moving things towards the center. He's still got pawns. I would say he's kind of wasting a bit of development time with his pawns now, because his next move is to move this pawn up. So he's possibly opening this line for his bishop. His bishop definitely has this line. pieces are stuck back here at the moment, whereas my bishops are a little bit more free to maneuver, and I've got my knights out. So my next move is the pawn on the queen's side again. This looks very much like what I used to favor in my defenses, but also my openings, where I would have a nice closed and very compact development. And he responds by bringing his pawn out on the end here at the edge of the board. Not quite sure what he's trying to accomplish there. He's got his queen on that line. So I brought my bishop out there, still developing pieces. And he responds by putting a knight there. So his queen only has a limited line at the moment, and that also will block his bishop's line. But it takes control of some more squares towards the center. I then put my bishop in the middle there, taking this line. And you can see there's quite a lot of pressure, I think, in the center, which there should be, although he's only been able to develop one piece. He has, however, opened some lines. So we'll see what happens with his defense. He moves another pawn. So he's taking this Caro-Kann to new levels. Whether we mean high or low, we don't know yet. And my next move was to move the queen. So you can see I've got plenty of choice as to whether I want to castle queen's or king's side here. So that looks like what I'm preparing to do. I've got a good solid development here. Nice compact development. It's the sort of thing I used to like playing. And he brings another pawn out. So he's leaving open his rear line there, his back rank, and bringing all of his pawns forward. He's got a defensive wall of pawns, but that also stops him from developing. He's also losing his time in development. So at the moment, we're both eyeing that center. So there's some pressure on these squares here, but also planning what kind of lines we've got here. This one looks rather important there. I've got two pieces on that, plus this knight here. So how long will his pawn wall hold him out? So my next move was to move the rook. So it looks like I will be castling on the king's side, and he brings his bishop or his centurion out. Probably with an eye on this line, again a very busy spot at this point I castled, leaving my Imperator in his fortress villa, and he brings his bishop out, taking control of these lines I've got even more pressure on these ranks there. And finally, it breaks. He moves a pawn forward, threatening my knight. So there's some interesting things going on there. We've got one piece on that, but the knight has a piece as well. He's got a bishop here that can attack this piece and won't be threatened by knight. So I don't know what he's quite thinking he's going to do, so because I responded to the attack by moving my knight towards the bishop. This move threatens these two pawns, but it also puts the knight at risk because he takes it. There's a nice metal sound as he takes that knight, captures the center square there. This bishop then is exchanged with the pawn. So now we have eliminated two pieces. That we're putting pressure on that center. However, we've opened up some lines. He's missing a bishop that would have had that line there. But his knight is still in a good defensive position. Even so, he moves it back, possibly to threaten the pawn, possibly to make a move there, threatening some of these pieces. And my response is to move my knight. So this is probably coming across, probably still looking at this line over here, because he still hasn't castled. He can't castle here until he removes his queen and knight. But he could castle here anytime. What does he do? He moves a pawn instead. So he seems to want to press on this side. I'm not sure what he's doing there. Unless he's looking at this. I take his pawn, capturing the other center square there. So again, I've got control of the center, and he retakes with his pawn. So we still have a couple of pawns in the center there. In order to put some pressure on him, I've got to go over to this side. So what I've done is put my knight over here on g3. So that's looking at these two squares towards the center and the edge of the board as well. And he responds by putting a pawn forward. That pawn is in the line of the rook, but we also have an open line for the queen. He also could have used that space for his knight to put a bit of pressure on my center. So how did I respond to that? I moved the bishop. That actually looks like a very risky move, because that bishop is threatened directly by that pawn, and there's nothing defending it. To look to see was doing here, but it becomes clear when you see the bishop is sacrificed, and I'll make those nice little metal sounds. Crash, the clash of swords there. So he's just won my bishop, but I think he has forgotten to castle. He's left this position very vulnerable, so I've taken the pawn with my queen and put him in check. So there's no piece that he can move in the way, and he can't take the queen, so he has to move his king out of check. Now, this prevents him from castling. My next move then is to take his pawn with my knight. That probably I'm not sure what my plan was there, except to get that knight into a threatening position to prevent him moving his king. He moves his rook across, and I move my queen across, capturing his pawn. So we are close to an impasse here. My queen is threatening his knight and rook. It's preventing him moving his king into this space. The knight prevents him moving there. And he can't move there or there, so his king is pinned there. And he's going to bring his bishop back. I think it probably would have been good to consider putting it there, depending on what his long strategy is here. But he doesn't have time because I put him in check again with the queen. He does the only thing he can do and moves his king to that spot. And I push the pawn forward. This makes it impossible for him to move there. So he brings his queen out to that line to threaten that pawn. However, I move my queen there and put him in check, and it looks like he conceded at this point. So that's one of the games that I wanted to show you that I played, and it allowed us to move these little cute pieces around and play with them. If you have any ideas or opinions on the analysis of this game, please leave a comment. I'd be really interested to hear. Let's set it up again, and we will do one more game that I played a few years ago, and that one as the defense. Do you like that sound? I find that very relaxing. That's what I like about these very heavy pieces, very nice pieces. So this is the second game I'd like to show you. Again, I played a few years ago on chess.com. This one I played black defense, and I played against someone. He was from France, and he opened with a very traditional king's pawn opening, and I responded with what may be a Sicilian defense, but we'll see what I did, because I don't know how exact I did my openings and defenses. So he's coming forward with his queen's pawn there, and I move the knight out. And he brings his bishop out. So, very interesting opening there, with a sort of variation on a Sicilian. And again, it looks like I'm playing a very closed position here. Got my pawns out like this. Some people like to say they play the player and not the board, and it's probably not a good thing to do unless you know the person really well and you know their foibles and eccentricities, and then it can be fun. I definitely think that playing someone you don't know on chess.com is different than playing someone you do know, and that can be very fun too. But it's been brought up in conversation quite frequently of late, why women don't play chess as much as men do. I have some theories about that, but they're only theories from my personal experience. I know that everyone I've played on chess.com has been male. I've never played a woman on chess.com, so the statistics must be pretty accurate that way. I also think that women by nature are just very, very busy. They're very practical. They have to do things. Some animals have to be fed. Houses have to be cleaned. Things like that. Children, family, food has to be cooked. And, it's not good or bad, but I think men look at things differently. They're more likely to spend hours sitting in front of a game, whether it's on the screen or on the board. So it's possibly a time frame mindset that women have that prevents them from playing a lot of chess. Possibly, that's just my theory. Anyway, what happens next is he develops his knight, and I bring my bishop out. Get another very closed position there. A little compact development, and see what he does next. He develops his knight. And I move a pawn forward. So I have sort of a held back center defense there. I've developed a bishop and a knight. Got this rank open in case I want to castle, and this one open for some development. And he moves his pawn, so he has this classic king's pawn opening here with the bishop coming out for sort of a Sicilian there, I think. Now we start the arms race really quickly. Pawn takes, and he brings his bishop out in a bold stroke. And this is why I really like these closed developments, these compact positions, especially if I'm playing someone who might be more experienced or a better player than I am. It gives me a more solid defense. Used to anyway, that's what I used to like to do. I have different variations now. So I brought my knight out, my little position there, and he brings his knight forward. So we've moved very quickly into the middle game. Pieces are developed. Center of the board is controlled by black. Have a few white squares there. And my queen moves forward to control that line with a check on his imperator, which makes a very interesting game because we have this bishop pinning the knight, and this knight that can possibly come forward as well. Possibly a discovered attack there. And to block that, because he doesn't want to destroy his prospects for castling by moving his king, he brings a pawn forward. This attacks this pawn and blocks the queen from checking. So next I take the bishop. So I've gained a bishop, and I've got a line through which he can't castle. So not a bad position, looks pretty strong. And he takes, and my knight takes. There's a lot of activity in the center, a lot of struggle over that center, and you can see why that's important, because now I've still got a good defense and developed some pieces, but he's left himself quite open, and at the moment he can't castle on the king's side anyway. So he pushes a pawn forward, and I move my knight. This not only threatens his pawn, but protects my knight. So he takes, threatening my position here because I haven't castled yet either. So my next move is forward with the queen to put him in check. Now this is going to destroy any prospect he has of castling, because he then has to move his king to get out of check. He possibly could have put his queen in the way, but that would probably expose him to this, which he didn't want. So instead he's moved his king and given up any rights to castling. Then I take the position. He's got a wide opening, only 2 pieces forward, although he does have a bishop lined up here. And his queen might be able to exert some pressure. So he moves his rook with a view towards this line here. But I'm not fooled into castling just yet, because this rook has this rear rank covered. So I move a pawn up to threaten his knight, which he then retreats, moving it in the line ahead of his rook, making this moot now, at which point I prudently castled. So I've got 2 rooks on that rank, and he's blocked himself. He then brings his knight forward, threatening pawn, bishop, and also this position here, which might not be too much of an obstacle. I'm trying to see what he's doing there, because what I've just done now is pinned his knight. If he moves that, I can take the rook. It's not a great exchange, because the rook will be exchanged in that rear rank for the queen, but it's still a prospect. What he can do is retake possession of the center, which he does by capturing the knight. So he's got those 2 knights there. Now we have this rank, 2 pieces on each, and the timing is right. However, the knight retakes, and he pushes forward. So this is getting quite exciting. He's threatening queen and bishop. And just looking at this position, it's easy to see how a move like that, if you were playing 1-minute chess or timed chess, might not be quite so obvious. You would be probably inclined to react to that immediate threat. But what I did was push the attack, putting the king in check. Now if he takes with the queen, I take with my queen, and that spot would be undefended. So this attack is now rendered moot, and he has to move his king because there's no other defense against a check with a knight. So he's got this rook blocked off in the corner, and I take with my rook. Nice. Hard. I like these pieces. So again, in a very strong position here. But we still have this conflict to resolve, and he's very keen to resolve it. He takes, and I then threaten with the bishop. So I've got a knight here, and queen there. The queen defending the knight, and I've got a bishop there that's pointed straight at that pawn, and this one. He still has this line here, the pink, the pink line. And he uses that to advantage by blocking my queen's defense of the knight. But to again render his attack moot, I bring my queen across, and she's no longer defending the knight. She's protected somewhat by the bishop and the knight. He pushes the pawn forward to threaten my queen, and I respond to that with a check. So he shouldn't have left this square open, because I think now he's for it, and he has conceded. So that is the second game I wanted to show you, with these lovely Roman chess pieces. They're very nice, very heavy, and they're an absolute pleasure to play with. I hope you've enjoyed watching me push them around the board, and the analysis as well, although I'm sure some of you could give a much better analysis, and if you can, or you have any opinions whatsoever, to put a comment down below, and check out ASMR Chess channel, because as I said, he's a very, very nice fellow, and his channel is so relaxing, and it's one of the best chess channels that I know. I love watching him analyze games and play games with patrons and things. So there you have a little foray into the game of chess with centurions, generals, equites, and maybe lepida. Yeah. And some nice columns as well.